Hey guys, welcome back to Calibrate Tools. And now when it comes to cutting and grinding materials like wood, metal, or even brick and stone, having an all-around tool like an angle grinder can definitely make your job a lot easier. So stick around and we'll see how this very versatile tool works. Okay guys, we have an angle grinder fresh out of the box with certain parts uninstalled, which actually provides us more clarity as to what they are and how they are installed on the tool and everything else like that. So this is kind of an unboxing, if you will. Okay, so this right here is the motorized portion of the device. And obviously the motor is housed in this area right here where I'm gripping. It's called the handle here. Now this button here is called the slide switch. And it's basically the on and off switch. So you would push it up like that to turn it on, and then depress that and it turns off like that, okay? So that's the slide switch. This button right here, this is the spindle lock button. Now when you depress it or you press it in, it locks the spindle in, right? It prevents it from turning, in other words, right? Because this is what spins when the device is in operation. Okay, so the reason that you want to use the spindle lock button, its function is to pretty much keep that locked so when you're changing grinding wheels, it's not spinning while you're changing it, okay? So that'll be pretty difficult trying to get a wheel off and this is spinning while you're doing it. So you got to keep this stationary, and that's what that button's for. Okay, this is the spindle that we just spoke about that spins, right, when the device is in operation. And if you notice, around the spindle, you have these circular discs here. You have one on the inside and one on the outside. Okay, the one on the inside is called the flange. And this one right here on the outside is called the flange nut. And of course, they're instrumental when it comes to installing the grind wheels, but we'll get right to that in a minute. Then you have the guard right here. Okay, so let's get into how you install the guard before we go any further. Okay, the first thing you want to do when you install your guard is you want to remove the flange and the flange nut, okay? And you do that by way of this fork-like device here. In this case, it's a metal fork-like device, and it has two metal protrusions on each tip of the fork. And if you look at your flange nut, you have 4 holes, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And these two metal protrusions insert themselves into 2 of these 4 holes at a time, right? So before you do that, remember you have to press the spindle lock button to lock the spindle in place in order to be able to remove the flange nut and the flange, right? Because if it spins, once again, you can't remove anything. So we have our spindle lock depressed, and we're going to take our hardware here and remove the flange nut first. Now that it's loose, we can take it off. And then we simply slide our flange up and off. Okay? Okay, so now that the flange and the flange nut is off, we can install the guard onto the device, right? Okay, so let's talk about the guard for a second. If we look at this opening here, you see different shapes around the inner circumference of the opening here, right? You have larger, smaller, etc., right? So these openings correspond to this right here, all right? And that's at the base of the spindle, right? So what we want to do is we want to line up each opening to its corresponding shape on the base of the spindle. So we're going to take these 2 large openings here first and line them up with the larger shapes that correspond to them on the base of the tool, and that would be these 2 right here. So as we line it up and place the guard on the device, we want to press down and turn slightly, okay, to make sure that it doesn't come off, and then continue turning until these holes right here, okay, snap onto this tab right here. All right, so we know that it's on. Okay, so we see that the guard snapped in at the first hole on the tab here. And this tab, by the way, is called the detent tab, right? So we have 5 holes in total, and we only use 1, so you have 4 left, right? So what that does, it allows the guard to rotate on the axis of the spindle. So let's just say you're left-handed. This particular orientation of the guard may be most comfortable for you, or let's just say that wherever you're grinding, it's only best done with the guard in this position. Okay, so that's great. But let's just say you're right-handed. You may want to rotate the guard into a position that's more comfortable for right-handed people, or the material that you want to access may be better accessed if you rotate the guard into another position. So this is how you would do that, right? You would depress this tab here. Let me give you a side profile of it. You would depress it and simply rotate the guard anti-clockwise, right, into the position that's best suited for you, right? And let's just say you want to take it all the way to the other end, like that. And there you have it. You have a right-handed oriented guard position. Okay, so now that we have our guard installed, let's put our side handle on. Now, if you notice on the device, you have one socket on this side and another socket on this side for the side handle, okay? So once again, that depends on how comfortable you are manipulating the device. If you're right or left-handed, you may want the handle on the side that's preferable to you. So in my case, let's put it on the right side. So you simply take the side handle and screw it into the socket like that. And that's that. Now, if I need to access a piece of material that's better accessed, on my right side, I may want to switch the handle over, and it doesn't matter if I'm left-handed or right-handed. It's simply the best way to grind your material. Okay, guys, I have some grinding, cutting, sanding, and polishing wheels in front of us, and we're going to talk about what they are and their applications. First thing to note is that they are 4.5 inches because our angle grinder is a 4.5 inch angle grinder, okay? So you want to make sure that you match the size of your wheel with your angle grinder. You don't want something that's mismatched because it won't work, right? So let's look at the one on the left. This is a metal cutoff wheel, and it's about 1/16 in thickness. Next to that, we have another metal cutoff wheel, which is about 1/8 in thickness. So if you compare the two, you see that the one on the right is thicker than the one on the left, right? And next to that, we have a diamond blade cutting wheel. And with this one, you can cut just about anything. You can cut tile, metal, steel, masonry, laminate, fiber cement, and PVC piping. The one on the extreme right is what's called a flap disc. It's a grinding and polishing wheel. It has sandpaper-like material on it. I think that's about 40 grit. And you can sand things down, take paint off, and so forth with this one. So let's go ahead and install them and see what happens. Another thing to note before you install your wheel into your angle grinder is that not only do you want your wheel to be the correct size for your angle grinder, but you also want the RPM ratings of your wheels to match or exceed the RPM ratings of your angle grinder. In this case, this is a 12,000 RPM angle grinder, and fortunately, all these wheels match or exceed 12,000 RPMs. Okay, the first thing you want to do before you install any wheels onto your device is that you want to make sure that the spindle and the flange and flange nuts are clean and free of debris before you install the wheels. So let's wipe those off, inspect for any damage. Okay, so once you've cleaned your flange nuts, and spindle and inspected for damage, you want to take your flange and you want to place it on your spindle. Now, before we do that, I want you guys to look at the base of the flange. If you notice, it has a particular shape, and that shape corresponds to the shape also at the base of the spindle. If you see right here, if you look at this flange again, you see how that's shaped? Right? It's not a perfect circle, right? And it's the same shape at the base of the spindle. So you want to place your flange over that. Okay, and make sure that it sits correctly on that shape. And that's how you know it's correctly seated. Okay, then we're going to take our metal cutoff wheel, the one that's 1/16 inches in thickness, right? And we're going to use that in our first demonstration to cut our metal. So if you notice, the center of these wheels, okay, the metal cutoff wheels we have, are depressed, right? So it's not a flat plane all the way across. It dips in and dips out, right? So we have this depressed center. You want to take that depressed center and you want that to face down, right? So in other words, if we look at the profile, you want that facing down when you install it into the tool. So here we go. And you want to make sure that that center perfectly fits around that circle on the flange, right? You see that? Let's do it again. Like that. All right. Okay, then you want to take your flange nut, which is this, and you want to make sure that you install it on the spindle with this portion facing up. Why is that? Because if you have a wheel that's 1/8 or less in thickness, then this portion of the flange nut has to be facing up. And if you have a wheel that's 1/4 of an inch or more in thickness, then this portion of the flange nut must be facing down when you install it on the spindle. So let's go ahead and install our flange nut. So in order to tighten our flange nut, remember we have to depress our spindle lock button here. And make sure that the spindle doesn't move. All right, and then you take your hardware and tighten the flange nut. Okay guys, we got a metal rod installed in the vise right here, and we're gonna go ahead and cut it with our 1/16 inch thick metal cutting wheel here. So let's go ahead and do that. Before we do, make sure you have some gloves and the proper eyewear, or even maybe a face shield to protect you from any flying debris. Now you wanna make sure that the wheel is perpendicular to the rod or material when you're cutting. Okay guys, I'm going to use this wheel to grind and polish this steel bar at about a 5 to 15 degree angle. Hey guys, what do you think of that diamond blade? That thing can cut everything, right? And always remember to read your instructions for proper care and maintenance of your device and the wheels. And always unplug before you adjust anything on the tool. If you enjoyed today's video and you learned something today about angle finders and you can't wait to rush out and get one for yourself, hit that like and subscribe button. Hey, I know it's pretty noisy in the end there, but that's how it is when you talk about power tools. And I'll see you guys in the next video.